Outside, the snow came down in sheets, the kind that erased the skyline, softened the edges of Chicago's glass towers until they looked like something imagined rather than built. Inside the lobby of Titan Dynamics corporate headquarters, the warmth was immediate and institutional. Recirculated air, the faint hum of a building that never slept, floors polished to the color of still water. Daniel Hayes pushed his mop in slow, deliberate strokes across the marble. The lobby was already spotless. The VIP gala had brought in half of downtown's elite, and with them, half of downtown's salt and slush. He'd been cleaning the same 10-foot stretch for the better part of 20 minutes, working the gray mop head into the grout lines where mud had been ground in by Italian leather soles. The heating system kicked on with a low pulse. He felt it before he heard it, a dry warmth rising from the vents along the baseboard. He set the mop against the bucket, pulled off one glove, and rolled his left sleeve past the elbow. Not to show anything. Just because he was warm, the tattoo caught the overhead light. It had faded over the years, the black ink gone to a dark greenish gray. The edges softened, but the shape was still there. The screaming eagle, the patch of the 101st Airborne. Below it, a small number. 14. Hey, the voice came from behind him. Sharp. Practiced. The kind of voice that had learned early that impatience was a form of authority. Daniel turned. A young man in a tailored charcoal suit stood with his arms slightly out from his sides. The posture of someone who'd taken exactly one leadership seminar and hadn't yet learned what real authority looked like. You're in the shot. Move. The man, his lanyard read, Ryan Caldwell, Director of External Affairs, gestured at a photographer setting up near the entrance. And you're just a janitor, right? Single dad living on that? He glanced at the mop. Some people make better choices. Daniel said nothing. He picked up his mop. 10 minutes later, the front doors opened, and the man who walked in stopped Ryan Caldwell mid-sentence without saying a single word. Daniel's shift started at 9 and ended at 5 in the morning. He preferred it that way. Nights in the Titan Dynamics building were quiet. The executive floors emptied out, the conference rooms went dark, and the only sounds were the mechanical breathing of the HVAC system and the occasional distant click of an elevator arriving at the wrong floor. He was 41 years old. His knees told him so every morning when he swung his legs off the cot he still kept in the bedroom, even though Ethan had stopped sleeping in there 2 years ago, and Daniel now had the whole apartment to himself, such as it was. 600 square feet in Pilsen. Radiator that worked about half the time. A landlord who'd sent a letter in October about a rent increase, effective January 1st. January 1st was 6 days away. He'd done the math already. The new rent, combined with the payment plan for Ethan's braces doctor, Reyes had said they'd need the lower arch by spring, left him about $200 short per month, assuming nothing broke, no one got sick, and he picked up every available Saturday shift. He'd been picking up Saturdays since September. Tonight was the Titan Dynamics Winter Gala. They'd brought in 40 extra cleaning staff from the temp agency. Daniel had been assigned the main lobby, which was, theoretically, an easy post visible, low traffic until the guests arrived. A chance to stay warm, but it also meant working near the event coordinator and the PR team, which meant working near people like Ryan Caldwell. Ethan was at the public library on West 18th, 2 blocks from their apartment. He did his homework there on the nights Daniel worked late. The librarian, a tall woman named Mrs. Brennan, who wore reading glasses on a chain, had started leaving a cup of hot chocolate at the circulation desk for him on cold evenings. Daniel had tried to thank her once. She'd waved him off and said it was decaf. His left knee ached with the particular insistence it had lately, not sharp, not incapacitating, just present. A low, grinding reminder. He'd been told in 2011 that the cartilage damage was permanent, that he should avoid prolonged standing, that he should explore low-impact career options. He'd been a staff sergeant at the time, 27 years old, 3 weeks out of a rehabilitation unit at Landstuhl, and the idea of a low-impact career had struck him as vaguely absurd. He mopped. He rinsed. He mopped again. Outside, through the glass facade, Chicago disappeared into white. He'd enlisted at 22, straight out of a community college in Rockford, where he'd spent 2 years not knowing what he wanted. The Army had seemed like a decision he could live inside concrete. Structured, bounded. He hadn't been wrong about that. He was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, 3rd Brigade Combat Team. He went to Fort Campbell, then to Mosul, then to the Kunar Province, then back again. 14 years total. He made Staff Sergeant. He was good at it, not in a way he talked about, but in the way that gets noticed by the men around you, which is the only way that counts. The knee went in 2011 during a live fire exercise in the Petch River Valley, not enemy fire. A bad landing from a rooftop he'd climbed to provide covering position. He heard the pop before he felt it, which was a strange thing that the sound of your own body failing could arrive faster than the pain. He'd finished the evolution before allowing himself to acknowledge what had happened. Surgery at Bagram. More surgery at Landstuhl. A year of rehabilitation. Medical discharge in 2012. He'd come back to Rockford. Met Christine at a church function he'd attended, mainly because a buddy from his old unit had dragged him there. They married in 2013. Ethan was born in 2015. For a while, there was a version of normal that felt achievable, but Christine had married someone she thought she understood, and what she got instead was a man who flinched at car backfires and couldn't explain why, who slept light and woke hard, who sometimes went very quiet for days at a time and couldn't find his way back from the quiet to anything she could reach. She was a good person. She'd tried for 3 years. When she left, she said she was sorry, and he believed her. He got full custody of Ethan by agreement. He moved to Chicago because there was work here, and work was what he understood. He cleaned office buildings at night. He picked Ethan up from school or aftercare at 4 in the afternoon. He made dinner. He helped with homework. He went to bed. He woke up and did it again. There were things he did not talk about. The Kunar, the men he'd brought back and the ones he hadn't. The afternoon in winter 2009, when a vehicle in their convoy caught a roadside device on a mountain pass, and he'd run into the burning chassis twice to pull out the men inside, with a rifle sling tied around his wrist because the door handle had melted and he needed purchase. He did not talk about what that felt like. He did not talk about the sound. He lived because Ethan needed him to. That was enough. Most days, that was more than enough. Titan Dynamics had been a defense contractor for 40 years. They built radar systems, communication infrastructure for forward operating bases, and, lately, software platforms for data integration across joint military commands. They were good at what they did, and they knew how to dress it up. The lobby tonight had been transformed into something between a corporate reception and a diplomatic function, with black tablecloths, low lighting over the bar, and a string quartet stationed near the elevator banks playing something that sounded vaguely festive and entirely unmemorable. The guest list included 3 members of the Illinois congressional delegation, a deputy assistant secretary from the Department of Defense, 14 lobbyists whose badges identified them only by first name and firm acronym, and General Robert Whitaker, 4 stars, recently back from his 3rd tour as a senior commander in U.S. Central Command. Victoria Hale, CEO of Titan Dynamics, had been in the building since 6 a.m. She ran the company the way she'd run the strategy practice at McKinsey before she'd been recruited away systematically, with very little wasted motion. Tonight was about signing. A multi-year contract extension with the DoD, worth north of $400 million, was being finalized. The gala was the ceremony. The work had already been done. Ryan Caldwell was the youngest director on the leadership team. He joined Titan 18 months ago from a communications agency, and he had a gift for optics, for understanding how things looked before understanding what they were. He had arranged the photographer. He had arranged the lighting. He had arranged the sightlines so that Victoria and General Whitaker would be framed against the company logo when they shook hands. What he had not arranged was the janitor standing in the middle of his shot. Daniel had been assigned to the lobby entrance from 8 to midnight. His job was to keep the floor clean as guests arrived, snow melt, wet shoes, whatever came in from outside. He was methodical about it. He moved when the traffic moved, waited when it stalled, stayed out of conversations he had no business in. He was good at being invisible. He was not, apparently, good enough. Ryan crossed the lobby in 12 quick steps, hands already moving to indicate the perimeter of his problem. You need to be somewhere else. We're doing photos in 10 minutes and you're standing exactly where I don't want you standing. Daniel looked at him, measured the space between them, took note of the lanyard, the suit, the particular brand of certainty that came from never having been wrong about anything that cost him personally. I'm assigned here, Daniel said. Entrance maintenance during arrival window. I don't care what you're assigned. I'm telling you to move. Ryan's eyes dropped briefly to Daniel's arm, where the sleeve had stayed rolled past the elbow. What is that? On your arm? Old tattoo. Looks like something off a prison wall. He said it the way people say things they intend to land, not carelessly, but precisely. The way you'd place a hand on a surface to steady yourself. Is that what you did before this? Or are you just... He gestured at the mop. This is where people end up when they don't make better decisions. Right? No offense. The lobby noise continued around them. The string quartet was playing something by Vivaldi. A server moved past with a tray of glasses. Daniel felt something move through him, not anger exactly, but the precursor to it. The thing that lived just below the place where anger begins. He'd spent years learning where that line was and how not to cross it, and he stood now very precisely on the near side of it. He thought about Ethan, about the library, about Mrs. Brennan's decaf hot chocolate, and the math he'd been doing in his head for 3 months. He rolled his sleeve down. He picked up his mop. I'll work the south end, he said. Ryan watched him go with the satisfied expression of someone who had just corrected a problem efficiently. He turned back to his photographer. Daniel moved to the south corridor. His knee ached. He mopped a clean floor. He did not look back. At 9:47, the automatic doors slid apart. The cold came in first, a front of it, hard and immediate, carrying the smell of snow and something electric. Several guests near the entrance stepped back slightly, instinctively. Victoria Hale was already crossing the lobby, heels precise on the marble. Her expression, the particular kind of composed that takes years to make look natural. 2 members of her leadership team flanked her at a respectful distance. Ryan straightened his jacket. He'd positioned himself at the optimal angle visible without being forward, ready to step into the frame when the handshake happened. He'd done this before. He was good at it. 4-star generals do not travel informally. There were 2 aides, a security officer who had been inside the building for 2 hours already, and a brief, efficient exchange at the door that Daniel, from the south corridor, watched without appearing to watch. General Robert Whitaker was 63 years old, built like a man who had never allowed himself the luxury of softening, with close-cropped gray hair, and the kind of stillness that isn't absence of energy, but rather its precise containment. He wore his uniform, Class A, full decorations, because the event had requested it, and because he understood that certain things are done correctly or not at all. He handed his coat to an aide, exchanged a few words with Victoria Hale, the brief, calibrated warmth of 2 people who respect each other and don't need to perform it. Ryan moved to introduce himself. But General Whitaker had stopped. He was looking past Ryan, past Victoria, past the string quartet and the guests and the carefully arranged optics of the evening. He was looking at a man in gray coveralls at the far end of the lobby, pushing a mop. The general walked, not quickly, but with direction, the unmistakable purposefulness of a man who has decided something. Ryan Caldwell took 2 steps to intercept, opened his mouth, and then found himself simply not in the way anymore. In the manner of water finding a path around stone. Victoria watched from across the room. She did not interfere. Daniel heard the footsteps different from the ambient noise of the event, different from the soft-soled shuffle of catering staff. He straightened before he turned around, an old reflex, and when he turned he found General Whitaker 3 feet away, studying him with an expression that Daniel couldn't immediately classify. "Your left arm," the general said. Quietly. "You rolled your sleeve up earlier." "I caught it from the door." Daniel looked at him for a moment. Then he rolled the sleeve back up. The tattoo was fully visible now. The screaming eagle, the patch of the 101st Airborne. Below it, the number 14. And below that, smaller, in a script that had blurred slightly with age. Currahee. General Whitaker was quiet for a long moment. "3rd Brigade," he said. "Yes, sir. Kunar Province. Winter of 2009. Something shifted in Daniel's chest. "I was there in an advisory capacity," the general said. "Not in your AO. But I read the after-action reports." He paused. "There was an incident on the Peck River Pass, a vehicle fire. A staff sergeant pulled 2 men out of a burning Humvee, went back in for a 3rd. There were 3 men in the vehicle," Daniel said. "I know." The general's voice had changed register, not softer exactly, but different. Stripped of ceremony. The report said he used a rifle sling as a handhold because the door handle had burned away. Said he had burns on both palms. Said he refused evacuation until all 3 men were stable. The report was accurate. "Are you?" The general stopped, looked at him more carefully at the age in his face, the gray at his temples, the way he held himself. "Your name?" "Daniel Hayes." Staff Sergeant, retired. 3rd Brigade, 101st Airborne. The lobby had gone quiet in stages, first the people closest to them, then the ripple outward as the silence spread, until the string quartet was the only sound remaining. And then they stopped too, because the second violinist had glanced over and seen a 4-star general standing at attention. Robert Whitaker had not come to stand at attention. But that's what he was doing. Ryan Caldwell, from 15 feet away, had the particular pallor of someone who has just replayed a conversation in his head and reached a very bad conclusion. "This man," General Whitaker said, and his voice carried now not raised, but carrying the way voices do when they are entirely at ease with being heard, served 14 years in the United States Army. 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 101st Airborne Division. He received the Soldier's Medal for actions in Kunar Province in December of 2009. He is the reason 3 men who would have died in a vehicle fire were alive to go home to their families. No one moved. "He did this," the general continued, with burned hands, on a knee he'd already damaged in a previous operation, after running into a burning vehicle not once, but twice. The 3rd man he pulled out, Specialist Marcus Webb, is currently a physical therapist in San Antonio. He has 2 daughters. Victoria Hale had crossed the lobby at some point during this. Daniel hadn't noticed her approach. She stood slightly to the general's left, her expression doing something he couldn't quite read. Not embarrassment exactly. Not performance. Something quieter than either. "We didn't know," she said. "It came out without ceremony. A plain statement." "That is the problem," said the general. Without heat, he looked at Ryan Caldwell, who was now standing with his arms at his sides in the manner of someone who wishes very badly to be made of something other than flesh. "I don't know what was said earlier this evening," the general said. He didn't raise his voice. "But I can guess at the shape of it. I've been in rooms like this my entire career. I know what assumptions look like from the outside." He turned back to Daniel. "Staff Sergeant Hayes, I apologize for whatever discourtesy was shown to you tonight. That is not what this country owes you." Daniel looked at him. There was something pressing against the back of his eyes that he'd learned, long ago, not to let show. He held it back the way you hold a door against wind, not easily, but steadily. "I'm all right, sir," he said. "I know you are," the general said. "That's not the point." From across the lobby, a congressional aide said something quietly into a phone. Near the bar, two lobbyists had stopped talking and were looking at their shoes. Ryan Caldwell had not moved. He looked like a man trying to remember how to breathe. Victoria Hale was still looking at Daniel with that unreadable expression. Then she made a decision. He could see it happen, the small shift that precedes action in people who are used to making decisions under pressure. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "could I have 10 minutes of your time?" After the ceremony, the contract was signed at 10:30. The photograph was taken. The string quartet played something celebratory. Daniel watched from the service corridor, his mop leaned against the wall, and felt the particular disconnection of observing an event from just outside its frame. Victoria Hale found him at 11:15. When the gala had settled into its second phase, the looser, warmer hour when the formal business is done and people remember they're human. She came without an aide or a lanyard or anything that announced her authority. She had a glass of water for herself and had thought to bring one for him. He took it. They stood in the service corridor beside a supply closet. It was not elegant. She didn't seem to notice, or didn't care. "I want to tell you that what happened earlier was not sanctioned," she said, "and I want to tell you that saying so feels inadequate. So I'm going to say it and then move past it, because dwelling on it doesn't help you." "I appreciate that," Daniel said. "I also want to offer you something." She looked at him directly, not the practiced directness of a performance, but the actual kind. "We have an opening in operational security. It's a ground floor position, but it's a real one. Facility, security coordination, access protocols, working with the on-site team. It's 8 to 5. Monday through Friday. The salary is," she named a number. It was 3 times what he was making. Daniel looked at the water glass in his hand. He was aware of how he looked: coveralls, worn boots, the residue of a night's work. He was also aware that she was making this offer because it was the right thing to do, and that she seemed like someone who did right things not for the optics, but because she'd decided, at some point in her life, that it was the only way to function. "The schedule," he said. 8 to 5. "Yes. I have a son. He gets out of school at 3:45. Most days I pick him up at 4. Victoria didn't miss a beat. "We can build in a flex arrangement. 4 o'clock departure. You work through lunch if needed to make up the time." She paused. "What's his name?" "Ethan." "How old?" 9. She nodded once, the kind of nod that contains a decision. "The offer stands. Take a few days. Talk to whoever you need to talk to." Daniel looked at the water glass again. Outside, muffled by the building's insulation, Chicago was still snowing. "I don't need a few days," he said. "But I need one thing to be clear. Name it. I'm not taking this because of tonight. I'm not taking it because of the general, or the story, or because I'm owed something. I'm taking it if it's the right job, if the work is real and the expectations are real and I'm evaluated on what I do, not on what happened out there." Victoria Hale held his gaze for a moment. Then she extended her hand. "Those are the only terms I'm offering," she said. They shook on it. The locker room where the cleaning staff kept their gear was on B2, past the loading dock. It was 11:58 when Daniel came down to change out of his coveralls. The gala was still running upstairs. He could hear the faint thump of the building's heartbeat, the elevator moving, voices in corridors. Ryan Caldwell was standing outside the locker room door. He was still in his suit, though the jacket was open now and the tie had been loosened. He had the look of someone who had spent the last 2 hours in a very uncomfortable conversation with himself. Daniel stopped, looked at him. "I'll be 5 minutes," Daniel said, reaching for the door. "I wanted to," Ryan started. Stopped, tried again. "I didn't know." What you'd done, who you were. I know. That doesn't make it, he looked at the floor. What I said, about decisions, about ending up somewhere. He made a gesture that wasn't quite a shrug and wasn't quite anything else. It wasn't about you. I do that, I say things, and I'm not thinking about who I'm saying them to. That's not an excuse. It's just, I know what it is, Daniel said. Ryan looked up. You saw a uniform, and you saw a mop, and you made a calculation. Happens. Daniel wasn't being generous. He was being accurate. The calculation was wrong, but the habit that produced it, you're going to have to deal with that yourself. I can't do it for you. I know. And when you figure out how to deal with it, Daniel said, the person who benefits isn't me, it's the next person. So? He opened the locker room door. Think about the next person. He went in and changed his clothes. When he came out, Ryan Caldwell was gone. Daniel stood in the corridor for a moment, coat on, keys in hand. The building hummed around him. Somewhere above, the gala was winding down. He took the elevator up, not to the lobby, to the parking structure, where the shuttle ran back to the transit stop. The knee ached. He rode it the way you ride something that hurts without complaint, without making it smaller than it is, without pretending it's fine. The shuttle dropped him at the 18th Street stop at 12:22. He walked the 2 blocks to the library, which should have been closed. The lights were still on. Ethan was asleep in a chair near the biography section, his head tipped against the armrest, his backpack on the floor beside him with one strap still looped around his ankle, a habit Daniel had taught him. Years ago, a small precaution that had become so automatic the boy did it without thinking. Mrs. Brennan was at the front desk, pretending to catalog. He fell asleep around 10, she said, without looking up. I didn't have the heart. Thank you. She waved him off. This time she didn't say it was nothing. Daniel crouched beside Ethan's chair, knee-screaming quietly, and he absorbed it and put a hand on his son's shoulder. Ethan came awake the way children do, all at once, eyes open and immediately tracking. Dad! He sat up. You're late? Did something happen? Did someone yell at you? No one yelled at me. Did you get in trouble? Daniel thought about the lobby. The general. The service corridor. Victoria Hale's handshake. No, he said. I got respected. Ethan considered this with the seriousness of a 9-year-old processing unexpected information. What does that mean? It means some people saw me clearly tonight. That doesn't always happen. They walked out into the snow. It was still coming down, had been coming down for hours without pause. The kind of Chicago snowfall that doesn't rush, that seems in no hurry, that has somewhere to be but isn't worried about arriving. Can we get pizza? Ethan asked. It's midnight. The place on Cermak is open until 2. It says so on the sign. I checked. Daniel looked at his son, the backpack over one shoulder, the unzipped jacket because he never zipped his jacket, the faint red mark on his cheek from the chair armrest. He looked at the snow coming down through the amber circle of a streetlight. He thought about the new job. The schedule. 4 o'clock pickup, every day, no negotiation required. He thought about the apartment near Pulaski Park that he'd looked at online twice but never called about. The one with the second bedroom that had its own window. Yeah, he said. We can get pizza. They walked side by side through the snow. Ethan talked about a book he'd been reading about deep-sea creatures, something about bioluminescence, about how certain fish in total darkness generate their own light, how it was a survival mechanism, but also, he thought, kind of beautiful. Daniel listened. He did not walk like a man who cleaned floors for a living. He did not walk like a man who was behind on his rent, or worried about his son's orthodontia, or carrying a knee that would require eventual surgery and years of management. He walked like a man who had learned, a long time ago in a cold country far from this one, that the measure of a person is not what gets taken from them, it's what they do with what remains. The snow kept falling. The city absorbed it without complaint. They walked on.